into the death of her boyfriend Michael Hutchence. Earlier, they rejected speculation that the rock star died when a bizarre sex game went wrong.
Apparent suicide remain a mystery. The shock of his death has stunned Australians from all walks of life.
Those sort of events are tragic. It takes from the Australian and world rock scene one of our most gifted and talented.
On the 22nd November 1997, the early Sydney light crept across the polished marble floors of the Ritz-Carlton in Double Bay, a pale, indifferent glow that did nothing to soften the silence hanging outside room 5 at 24. Housekeepers moved through the corridor with rolling carts and half-awake footsteps, unaware that on the other side of one door, a man who had once commanded stadiums with an electric, almost supernatural presence was now motionless, suspended in a moment that would fracture millions of hearts around the world. The air inside the room was heavy with the scent of spilt wine and stale perfume, a strange mixture of glamour and decay. On the carpet lay an overturned glass, a half-open suitcase, a phone knocked off its cradle as if it had been reached for in a moment of desperation. And there, in that dim stillness, Michael Hutchence knelt with his head bowed, the belt looped above him, finally slackening from the weight of a life that had become too heavy to carry. The police would arrive at flashing cameras and a storm of speculation. The world would search for reasons, explanations, and anyone to blame. But the truth, like the man himself, would remain layered, intricate, and painfully human. He had entered the world on 22nd January 1960, long before the lights, the roar of crowds, and the relentless rhythm of fame carved their marks into him. Born in North Sydney to Patricia, a former model and makeup artist with a restless, creative soul, and Kelland, a traveling salesman whose ambition pulled the family from city to city, Michael's earliest memories were defined by movement. Before he could form full sentences, he was already learning to adapt, to read rooms, to sense mood shifts. Perhaps that early instability nurtured the chameleon inside him, the performer who could transform himself effortlessly, becoming whatever the world wanted while hiding whatever he feared to show. When he was 4 years old, the family relocated to Hong Kong, a city vibrating with contrasts, neon lights and narrow alleyways, British uniforms and Chinese street markets, humid nights humming with the sounds of taxi horns and distant music. It was there, amid the bustling chaos, that young Michael discovered the strange electricity that came from attention. He performed in a toy store commercial, standing boldly in the white glare of studio lights, delivering lines with a confidence that startled the adults around him. His mother watched him with fascination, sensing that her son carried something she could not shape but could already feel the world demanding. School was a patchwork of transitions: Glenelly, Beacon Hill, King George V. Each one a new set of faces, a new terrain for a boy who was learning that the easiest way to survive constant change was to charm through it. He became the child who could disarm a room with a smile, the one who didn't need to assert himself loudly because people naturally leaned toward him. But beneath his calm exterior was a persistent loneliness, an ache created by the distance between where he lived and where he felt he belonged. He wrote small poems in the margins of his notebooks, lyrics without melodies, confessions he never showed anyone. Even then, he was learning to hide behind beauty. In 1972, when he was 12, the family moved back to Australia, settling in the quiet northern suburbs of Sydney. The bright chaos of Hong Kong was replaced by wide streets, eucalyptus trees, and a quieter rhythm he struggled to accept. At Davidson High School, he met Andrew Ferris, a shy, introspective boy with a gift for melodies. Their friendship formed instantly, quietly, like two puzzle pieces clicking together. Andrew brought structure, chords, and discipline. Michael brought emotion, instinct, and fearless expression. Together, They were a storm waiting to form. But just as Michael began to find stability, his parents' marriage fractured. The arguments, the silences, the separation. It all left a scar he never fully acknowledged but always carried. For a time, he lived with his mother in California, drifting through classrooms and beaches, feeling like a foreigner in every place he touched. The only constant in his life was the growing desire to create, to sing, to find a world where everything inside him could finally make sense. By the mid-1970s, he returned to Australia, and by 1977, something extraordinary was beginning to take shape. The Ferris brothers, Andrew, Tim, and John, had formed a small band, more passion than precision, but carrying a spark that could ignite under the right conditions. They invited Michael in, first casually, then with the seriousness of fate. It was in rehearsal rooms smelling of sweat and cigarette smoke that the magic emerged. Michael held the microphone not like an object, but like an extension of his body, singing with a rawness that surprised even him. His voice wasn't yet the polished, magnetic instrument it would become, but it carried a depth that hinted at the legend waiting inside him. On 16th of August, 1977, they performed their first show under the name Inks. It wasn't glamorous, a small suburban venue, a modest crowd, the equipment humming with imperfections. But something happened on that stage. Michael moved with restless energy, his curls flying, his eyes burning with a need for connection. And for the first time in his life, the world looked back at him with understanding. Applause hit him like oxygen. Under the lights, the loneliness paused. The boy, who had spent years shifting between countries, schools, and identities, finally felt anchored. But success was not immediate. For years, they played in pubs, hotels, and sweaty nightclubs where patrons spilled beer onto the stage and shouted over their early songs. Michael learned to control a room, to draw attention like a flame draws moths. He learned how to stare into a crowd and make them believe he knew each of them. But after every show, when the adrenaline faded, he felt the familiar ache of emptiness return. He had the attention he once craved, but it didn't soothe him the way he imagined it would. His relationship with Michelle Bennett, a soft-spoken young woman with a steady presence, became a refuge. She saw the boy behind the performer, the vulnerability behind the swagger. But even love couldn't quiet the mounting hunger inside him, not just for fame, but for something deeper, something undefined. By 1984, INXS had begun to break beyond Australia. Their awards at the Countdown Music and Video event confirmed what their fans already knew. Michael was becoming more than a singer. He was a phenomenon. His voice had matured into a sensual, breathy instrument. His stage presence was hypnotic. Women screamed for him. Men admired him. And the band, fueled by Andrew's songwriting and Michael's growing charisma, was stepping into its prime. But Michael's fame brought with it a dangerous duality. The bolder he became on stage, the more fragile he felt when the lights went out. That fragility was hidden behind charm, laughter, and seduction, but it was there, pulsing like a bruise under the skin. His world exploded with even greater intensity when he met Kylie Minogue. Their relationship in the late 1980s was a dazzling firestorm, passionate, glamorous, fevered. She was the golden pop princess. He was the dark, magnetic rock god. Together, they were a tabloid dream. But Michael, always searching, always restless, needed a deeper connection than fame could offer. And then, in the early 1990s, fate delivered a blow that would alter the entire trajectory of his life. It happened in Copenhagen in August 1992, during a late-night bicycle ride with model Helena Christensen. A confrontation with a taxi driver escalated unexpectedly, violently. The punch that landed on Michael's skull did more than knock him to the ground. It rewired him, He lost his sense of smell and taste, two of the senses tied most closely to emotional memory. But more devastatingly, something inside his personality shifted. Friends would later describe a darkness, a volatility, a sadness that had never been there before. The confident, sensual performer became unpredictable, drawn to extremes, haunted by an unnameable void. And from this moment on, his life began its slow, tragic descent, a path forged through fame, longing, heartbreak, and shadows he couldn't outrun. The years following Cliff Robertson's breakout success were supposed to be triumphant. The studios expected him to blend into Hollywood's glittering machinery, obedient, polished, predictable. But Cliff was wired differently. He wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing truth, even if it came with a price. By the mid-1960s, Cliff's life had become a tug-of-war between the roles that made him visible and the quiet, solitary world he had never exposed. He moved through studios like a ghost wearing a gentleman's suit, always polite, always controlled, always just out of reach. Directors admired him, actors trusted him, but no one truly knew him. He kept his childhood scars tucked beneath his calm exterior, the abandonment, the loneliness, the shadows he learned to live with. Hollywood didn't understand men like Cliff Robertson. It understood ambition. It understood desperation. But Cliff lived by something older, something rarer, conscience. And conscience in Hollywood was dangerous. In 1968, a script crossed his desk that shook him. A story about a mentally disabled man whose intelligence is artificially increased, only to discover the cruelty of the world with new clarity. It wasn't glamorous or marketable, and studios doubted it. But Cliff saw himself in it, a man rising beyond the limits placed on him, only to face punishment for daring to grow. He fought for the film, protected its integrity, and shaped scenes to keep it honest. For him, Charlie wasn't just a movie, it was a mirror. And when it was finally released, the miracle happened. Cliff Robertson won the Academy Award for Best Actor. That golden Oscar was supposed to be a crown, a key that opened every door. But instead, it became the last moment of pure triumph he would experience. The higher he rose, the more Hollywood wanted to own him. And Cliff was not a man who could be owned. After the Oscar, studios expected submission. Stars who said no were quietly punished, nudged aside, reshaped until they fit the system. Cliff said no too often. He refused shallow scripts, refused hollow characters, refused anything that insulted intelligence or morality. Hollywood remembered every refusal. Offers thinned. Invitations slowed. Meeting rooms grew cold. But Cliff didn't care. Somewhere within him lived that abandoned boy who learned to protect his dignity at all costs. Then came something darker, something he couldn't have predicted. A bank issued a fraudulent check with Cliff's forged signature. It wasn't his doing. It wasn't his approval. It was a crime carried out by a powerful figure within the Directors Guild of America. Cliff did what was right. He reported it. But he didn't realize he had just challenged a man with deep connections, a man protected by the system. Cliff didn't just expose a forgery, he exposed a figure Hollywood shielded. The punishment arrived quietly. His phone stopped ringing. Scripts stopped coming. Meetings vanished. He wasn't officially blacklisted, but he was pushed into the shadows by invisible hands. Friends avoided the subject. Some avoided him entirely. Producers who once respected him suddenly found him too risky. Cliff had told the truth, and Hollywood made him pay for it. The silence of those years hung heavy. He watched other actors fill roles he could have elevated, watched a career he built with integrity slowly suffocate under the weight of corruption he refused to ignore. Yet, even in that isolation, his dignity stayed intact. Cliff Robertson would rather stand alone than kneel to a lie. Years passed like a slow, grinding shadow, but Cliff Robertson refused to vanish entirely. In the quiet, he carved his survival in subtle, often invisible ways. Guest appearances on television, occasional roles in independent films, voiceover work, and teaching provided the faint pulse of a life tethered to the craft he loved. He became a master of reinvention, a man who knew the machinery of Hollywood so intimately that he could navigate it without becoming its victim again. Every choice he made carried the weight of lessons learned from betrayal, silence, and the bruising cost of integrity. He no longer chased applause. He pursued authenticity, even when the spotlight dimmed. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Robertson reemerged in supporting roles that showcased his subtle intensity. His performances in films like The First Deadly Sin and The Prize reminded audiences of the quiet force he carried. But the industry, still wary of a man who could not be bent, often cast him in smaller, controlled roles, failing to grasp the full magnitude of his talent. Behind every camera, he remained the same actor who had once commanded the Academy's recognition, but he now operated with a patience born of exile. He understood that fame could be fleeting, that glory could be cruel, and that true artistry demanded endurance. Despite the professional setbacks, Robertson's private life maintained a measured complexity. He married, divorced, loved, and lost. Relationships carried him through the solitude imposed by the industry, but they could not erase the scars of early betrayal and public scrutiny. His children, for whom he maintained a protective distance from Hollywood's prying eyes, were a source of both joy and reflection. He often contemplated the paradox of his life: celebrated yet marginalized, respected yet punished, admired yet misunderstood. The psychological toll of these contradictions only deepened the gravity with which he approached each role, each line, each character. By the late 1980s, he had quietly cultivated a reputation as a mentor to young actors and filmmakers. Those who worked with him spoke of his generosity, his guidance, and his exacting standards. He became the archetype of wisdom forged in adversity, a man who had seen the machinery of Hollywood up close and survived it without losing the integrity that had once set him apart. Even as he aged, his performances retained a magnetic tension, a subtlety that communicated both vulnerability and authority. The public, largely unaware of the quiet decades he had endured, only intermittently glimpsed the man behind the face. When he received roles in high-profile projects like Spy Game and later television appearances, it was always with the undertone of a seasoned actor who understood the game but refused to be defined by it. Each return to prominence was tempered by awareness, by a knowledge that Hollywood's adoration could shift overnight, that the machinery that had once exiled him could again ignore or exploit him. In his later years, Robertson reflected openly in interviews about the toll of fame, the price of integrity, and the personal cost of standing by one's principles. He spoke of his early triumphs with humility, of his forced periods of obscurity with clarity, and of the enduring satisfaction that comes from knowing one has not compromised the self for applause. His insights revealed the man beneath the actor, deeply intelligent, morally steadfast, and quietly courageous. By the time he passed, Cliff Robertson had become more than an actor. He had become a symbol of resilience in a world where compromise is often mandatory. His legacy, though partially hidden by Hollywood's selective memory, endures in the performances he left behind, the mentorship he offered, and the ethical fortitude with which he navigated a treacherous industry. His life serves as a testament to the cost of integrity, the persistence of talent, and the enduring power of self-respect in a world that often prizes compliance over courage. In the end, Cliff Robertson's story is not one of unbroken triumph, nor of complete tragedy, but of a man who walked a perilous path with honesty, who faced systemic opposition without surrender, and who, against all odds, preserved the essence of himself. In a world built on illusion, he remained a rare figure of authenticity. His life, quiet in its battles, yet profound in its resonance, continues to captivate those willing to look beyond the surface of Hollywood glitz and into the shadowed corridors of moral courage, artistry, and human complexity. Even as the years softened his body and slowed the pace of his work, Cliff Robertson remained a man defined by the intensity of his mind and the precision of his moral compass. The quiet moments in his home, surrounded by books, scripts, and photographs from decades past, became a refuge from the relentless scrutiny of the world he had once dominated. He reflected on the paradox of his existence, the fleeting triumphs, the sharp betrayals, the periods of obscurity that had tested his patience and resolve. He knew the world remembered the Oscar, the glamour, the flashes of cameras, but he also understood that the private victories, surviving with dignity, preserving integrity, refusing to compromise his principles, were the ones that truly mattered. Audiences who rediscovered his work in later years often commented on the weight he carried in every scene. There was a subtle gravitas in his performances, a depth born not only of talent but of lived experience, of a life that had seen both the seduction and the cruelty of fame. Every glance, every inflection, every silence was loaded with the resonance of someone who had been tested, someone who had been forced to navigate an industry that rewards compliance and punishes honesty. He had become a master of understatement, conveying the unspeakable truths of human experience without ever resorting to spectacle. He also became a silent teacher. Those who worked with him sensed his intensity and discipline, but they also discovered a generosity that was rarely visible to the public. He encouraged authenticity, demanding that actors confront the truth of their characters and themselves. Behind closed doors, he shared insights shaped by decades of experience, warnings about the seductive dangers of compromise, lessons on navigating the labyrinth of Hollywood without losing one's sense of self. His mentorship was quiet but profound, influencing generations of performers who would carry fragments of his wisdom into their own careers. Cliff Robertson's legacy, though sometimes overshadowed by the flashier scandals and triumphs of Hollywood contemporaries, remains deeply significant. He embodied a rare combination of talent, principle, and resilience. He demonstrated that integrity in the face of systemic pressure is not a weakness, but a quiet, enduring power. In a town built on image, he remained remarkably authentic. A man whose life cannot be fully understood merely by awards, headlines, or roles, but only through the careful study of the choices he made and the principles he refused to abandon. The haunting beauty of his story lies in the tension between visibility and invisibility, acclaim and exile, ambition and conscience. He stood at the intersection of recognition and rejection, and yet he preserved the core of himself, even when the world attempted to shape, distort, or diminish it. His life is a reminder that true artistry is inseparable from authenticity, and that moral courage, though costly, leaves an indelible mark far beyond the ephemeral applause of audiences. Even now, as one revisits his performances, one feels the quiet echoes of the battles he fought and the strength he maintained. The cinematic spaces he inhabited, whether on stage, in film, or through the mentorship of others, are imbued with his presence, a presence that continues to inspire reflection on what it means to remain steadfast in a world that constantly tests the human spirit. The story of Cliff Robertson is more than the tale of a Hollywood actor. It is the chronicle of a man who understood the price of integrity, who survived both triumph and marginalization, and who ultimately left a legacy defined not merely by fame, but by the quiet courage of a life lived on his own terms. And so, the final image that lingers is not of red carpets or flashing cameras, but of a man alone in a room, scripts in hand, contemplating the choices he made, the battles he fought, and the life he lived with unyielding honesty. In the shadows of Hollywood, his presence remains, a testament to resilience, principle, and the enduring power of an authentic life. The world may forget the details, the accolades, and the gossip, but it cannot erase the moral gravity he carried. A gravity that continues to echo in the quiet corners of cinema, reminding us that sometimes the most remarkable victories are those that cannot be celebrated publicly, but are won quietly with dignity and courage. In the weeks and months after 26th of November 1997, the world struggled to understand what had happened in that hotel room. Tabloids filled pages with speculation, friends whispered theories, and fans refused to accept the finality of a life snuffed out too early. Yet, behind the public chaos, a more intimate truth lingered. Michael Hutchence had lived with the weight of unseen pain, of a body and mind altered by accident, and of a heart that carried more love, longing, and regret than he could ever openly express. His brain injury, the head trauma in Copenhagen years earlier, had left traces that only the closest friends noticed. Irritability, impulsivity, a fragility beneath the rock star bravado. Some believed it was the ultimate factor in his death, a silent echo of a moment no one else could fully see. Those who knew him spoke of contradictions. The man who could command stadiums with a growl and a look, yet retreat into private sadness. A man who could inspire obsession, yet never let himself be fully known. His daughter, Tiger Lily, became a symbol of both the love he carried and the unresolved grief of a life interrupted. Paula Yates' death years later would reopen wounds in the story of a family forever touched by tragedy, underscoring the fragile thread that connected love, loss, and celebrity in Michael's life. Musically, his legacy endures. In excess albums, from Kick to Elegantly Wasted, remain timeless, capturing the tension between ecstasy and melancholy that defined both the band and Michael himself. His posthumous solo work, along with the documentary Mystify, Michael Hutchence, revealed a more vulnerable, introspective side, painting a portrait of a man constantly navigating the delicate balance between light and shadow. Footage of him laughing, singing, or staring pensively into the distance serves as a haunting reminder of both his charisma and his fragility. What remains most compelling is the mystery, not only of how he died, but of who he truly was beyond the lights and cameras. Rumors persist, questions remain unanswered, and the absence of Michael Hutchence feels as vast as the crowds he once captivated. Every note he sang, every stage he commanded, is tinged with the knowledge of a life lived intensely, painfully, and beautifully. His story reminds us that genius and tragedy are often intertwined, that the world sees only fragments, and that the quiet battles within a person may never be fully understood. In the end, the image that lingers is not the flamboyant frontman on stage, but the solitary figure in a Sydney hotel room, a man who carried both love and despair in equal measure. Michael Hutchence's voice continues to echo, his story continues to haunt, and his life, full of brilliance and darkness, remains a testament to the enduring enigma of human complexity.